I don't rehearse anything. I don't plan it that much. It's just in my head. I turn the camera on, I hit record, and I get out whatever's in my head. I guess I had done maybe 15 or maybe 20 of those Tech Talk videos, and it was getting as many views as everything else on his channel.
March Audio, a Not An Audiophile show partner. For the discerning audio enthusiast, performance and precision matter. That's why March Audio employs purified technology to engineer award-winning loudspeakers and amplifiers. Go now to marchaudio.com. March Audio, for the discerning audio enthusiast. And welcome back to Not An Audiophile. It's a new year, 2026, therefore a new season, Season 3. This is episode 45. I'm Andrew Hutchison, and today we being Brad Serhan and myself, speak to Danny Richie from GR-Research. We asked Danny some of the hard questions about not just cheesy parts, but also what the hell is a tube connector and many other things. Take a listen. It's ridiculous, Danny. I've watched your videos on and off for... Actually, I don't know how many years you've been doing them for. I know you've been building speakers forever, but the video, the YouTube channel, what, 6 or 7 or 8 years or something?
I don't think it's been that long. Maybe four or 5 years. Maybe
feels longer.
Yeah, it was an accident.
I think it's 5 years. I think it's 5 years.
Yeah. I didn't set out to do a YouTube channel or anything. It was Ron Bernay's fault. Ron sent out messages to about 30 different manufacturers and asked if any of them would be willing to do a Tech Talk style video that he could launch on his channel on Tuesday. So Tuesday Tech Talk.
Okay.
And a couple of companies responded. I responded. I said, yeah, I could probably do that. So he sent me a little webcam and told me how to use it and stuff, and told me to record a video, maybe 15, 20 minutes or something. Okay. And then upload it to my Google Cloud there, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then he would download that and edit it and do whatever. And I said, all right, I'll see what I can do. I'll put something together. So I recorded a video and uploaded it to the Google Drive, and he got it down and watched it, and he called me. He said, I can't believe it. I can't believe what you just did. And I said, what do you mean? What happened? And he said, you did that whole thing in one take. And
Shit.
And I said, what was I supposed to do? And he said, no, man, I like spliced it together and edited it. And he said, you did the whole thing without stopping. And I said, well, I didn't know what else to do. You know, I'm new at this. So, and I've done it that way ever since. I don't rehearse anything. I don't plan it that much. It's just in my head. I turn the camera on, I hit record, and I get out whatever's in my head, and then I give it to Ron to let him edit it. And so anyway, it was about, I guess I had done maybe 15 or maybe 20 of those Tech Talk videos, and it was getting as many views as everything else on his channel. And he said, you know, I really should spin you off into your own channel.
Okay.
And I thought, okay. And of course, and he did that, and he moved the videos from the Tech Talks over into it, so there was substance there. But I had no subscribers, and no one knew that I was there. So I had to kind of start from scratch,
right,
and gain viewers. So it just happened by chance. Like I said, I didn't plan to do that, but once it took off, it definitely was great for us and for just advertising. Yeah. And of course, it got me known by my face and not just by my work. It kind of put a face to the job, you know, and so now everybody recognizes me, which is also kind of weird, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, we could talk about that. It's the funny thing, isn't it, that you can, if you've sort of started out semi-accidentally, you've fallen into this thing. I mean, obviously you've got a natural gift for it, and you have the knowledge, of course, that you can impart. But so now you're kind of a minor celebrity. You go to a HiFi show or something, I guess, and you're kind of beating people off who want to, get your signature perhaps, or is it not?
You know, they just want They just want photos and they want to tell me about their system. Is usually what happens.
Yeah. Well,
and what's funny is I'm only a celebrity within the audio community. If I go out in the rest of the world, rarely does someone recognize me.
Well, that's probably the best kind of celebrity, though, isn't it?
It's
really,
the best kind. It really is. It's the best kind.
You sort of switch it on
weird.
and off.
I went to Poland to the indoor track World Championships for the Masters, and I got off the plane in Warsaw, and I was headed to baggage claim, and I got recognized by somebody in Poland, and I thought, "Oh wow. My goodness! Like, is this going to happen the whole time I'm here?" It didn't happen the whole time I was there, but it was funny that I was recognized immediately, and they knew my name and the company and everything else, and I thought, this is kind of weird, but. Yeah, if I'm at a show or something, then I can't walk around at a show without everybody wanting to say hello and stuff like that. Which used to, all of us manufacturers knew each other, and we all chatted, and we would go to dinner together and do things after hours. Everybody kind of knew everybody within the industry, so to speak. But it's different now that everybody has seen my face and love me or hate me, and I've got both. I get recognized. So it kind of freaks my wife out if she goes to a show with me. She's like, "Damn it, man. Like, this is crazy.
Who are these people?
Why do these people want to talk to you?"
Well, it is kind of the new world. It's not that. I mean, YouTube's been around forever. I get not forever, but for a very long time, 20 odd years, I guess. But it's it's something that in more recent times, particularly, I guess, in the maybe all industries, in the audio industry, now it's kind of how, I mean, that YouTube's replaced the magazines to some degree, right? I guess back in the day.
I think so. And I'm real big on this, I think that the young and coming YouTube reviewers will totally replace all of the traditional magazines. I firmly believe that. I think the guys that are so used to picking up Stereophile or the Absolute Sound, those guys are older than I am. And the younger audience that's coming into audio, they're not going to pick up a magazine. They don't go to a newsstand and buy the latest magazine. I mean, they want instant information on their phone or on their computer.
Yes.
And they want it in video format, and they want somebody to tell them about that product. And that's what they expect. So I think it'll totally replace all the online magazines at some point. I don't think the online magazines can even compete. I remember when I would do shows and I would get shaken down by those magazines to do advertising. And I remember one of them telling me they do like 25,000 publications per print, and they're trying to say, look, 25,000 publications. Well, there's times I'll drop a video in a week. I've got more than 25,000 views.
Yes.
So it's a new world. It really is.
It's incredibly powerful, and I guess we do audio only. We do a few videos, mainly of show reports and what have you, things that are kind of easy to produce. Because what people don't realise who are watching your show, although you say you do it in one take, you would be the only person on the planet who's making YouTube videos really quickly and easily, because it feels like it's an enormous amount of work. But you're saying you do most of it in one take without too much prep, and then someone else is doing the editing, because I feel like that's the time.
I always do it in one take.
Okay, wow, all right.
That's impressive, mate. Fair think about that.
I hand a chip now to Ron, who does the editing, and there's times, and Ron knows this, of course, he knows to kind of watch for it. But I have some sometimes with my allergies and stuff, I'll have some sinus issues, and I may have to stop and clear my throat or clear my sinuses and then keep going. And then he'll edit that out of it, so people don't see me having to give a sniffle or something.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't take a break in it. I just go through the entire thing, and then he'll throw up any measurements that I do. I'll email those to him, and he'll pop them up into the video somewhere, and he'll create the thumbnail and the title. And sometimes it's a week or so since I'd given him that video before he has it ready to launch. So sometimes when I watch it, I kind of watch it just like everyone else, and wondering what did I do on that one? What did I say? And I'll watch it and think, I'll be dang, that one went pretty well. Because there was was no prep that went into it or anything. I just do it on the fly, and then later I'll see how it turned out. So
yeah, no, that's kind of cool, and I understand that to some degree. You just want to make sure you don't fall in love with your own stuff too much, but it's hey. So look, I feel like to some degree you're the bravest man in the hi-fi industry in a way, because you do take on
consensus.
Take on consensus? Sorry.
Yeah, no, take on consensus. No, I agree with you, Andrew.
I haven't said anything yet. You mean in regard to being brave? Yeah, I mean brave from the point of view, yes. Danny, that you sort of don't step away from having a crack at some of the biggest brands and some of perhaps the more famous designers.
Sure.
Pull apart their work a little bit, or analyse it, critique it, and then, of course, you
audit.
Yeah, and sort of, and of course, describe some of the internals as being a little cheesy, which of course everyone enjoys. So there's two ways we could go with this question.
The cheesy word kind of stuck when I started saying cheesy. Everybody kind of keyed on that and thought it was funny, and now it's like I can't describe that stuff any other way.
No, we love it. It's I guess, and I think it's a term that the trade probably always used to some degree, but you've made it a publicly known saying, and we love it.
So funny. People make fun too, because I started out and I'll say, "Hey, everybody," which is just typical of us here in Texas. And for some reason, that kind of stuck. And Ron says, "You have to say that at every."
Oh no, you do.
You do. Andrew and I greet each other every time I call Andrew. We just go, "Hey, everybody." And and that's branding. It's brilliant branding.
Hey, everybody! I can't quite do it, but we love it. So it's a great accent, and it's a great. Everyone's got to have a gimmick, right? So you've got that. Are you familiar with Edgar Kramer? Well, you should be. He's Australia's most renowned hi-fi reviewer. And his website, soundstageaustralia.com, is, well, quite amazing. Incredibly detailed, well-written reviews on all sorts of interesting hi-fi components, interviews with industry luminaries, factory tours, and, of course, news. Don't forget, Soundstage Australia is part of Soundstage Global Network. So when you're finished with this podcast, go to soundstageaustralia.com and check it out. We could talk about all of your catchphrases, but I think everybody knows them, so we won't. But how did you get started? You obviously designed your own loudspeakers. In fact, I was flicking through your archive on your website this morning, and there is an impressive array of previous projects in there. You couldn't fail to know something about loudspeaker design at this point, purely based on the enormous array and variety of styles and design techniques, if you like, of this. I mean, there must be. I mean, do you know how many different designs you've conjured, excluding the modifications you've done? Because it looks like you might have built 50 completely different designs over the years. Is that the case, or is it?
Yeah, maybe more than that. And I've done a lot of design work for other companies.
Yep.
And I've designed product lines and drivers and things like that. There's a lot of those that are out there, some that people are well aware of, and then some that people were not that well aware of,
And you can't talk about that because it's secret, or it's or
no, most of them I can talk about. Like it wasn't real public whenever I did the redesign of the Usher BE718.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
At the time, they were paying Joe D'Appolito for the use of his name and publicity, and he would just sign off on the models that were actually being designed there in China, and just test and measure and sign off on it. And they really wanted to use his name because at the time he was very well known.
Yeah, he was hot. Yeah,
I was little known in the industry. I was still gun for hire, but I was lesser known. But they brought that speaker to me and they said it sounds okay, but we sure wish this was a better performance speaker, and we don't know what to do to get it there. And I said, let's see what I can do with it. And of course, it had really well designed drivers, but it just had average parts in there that were of no significance and some things that shouldn't be in there. And so I didn't even redesign it to a large degree. There were values that were changed, but it was a similar typology, but it went in with sonic caps and big air core inductors and good Mills resistors and So we shipped the parts to, at that time, Ursi, and had them assembled there. And then those crossovers were shipped to China and put in the speakers, and they went into every speaker that was sent to North America. And those were the ones they sent out to all the reviewers, and it won every award to every reviewer. And somehow I got a little mention in there somewhere about part selection or something like that. But I did the whole thing. So that was probably one of the lesser known companies that I did work for. And then the problem was they sounded a lot better than all the bigger models, because the bigger models had those cheesy parts. So all the dealers were asking, when can we make these larger models sound as good as the smaller one? And I think that was a kind of a bottleneck. And because they spent so much on the crossover parts, once you start spending $250, $300 on parts for a pair, it ate up the profit. So it kind of became a loss leader. And it wasn't feasible for them to do that across the whole product line without raising the prices to compensate for that. And they didn't want to do it. So that one model kind of ruined the line in a way, So
so that was your fault. When did you? I mean, if that was mostly what the mods were to that particular model, were premium components, less cheesy parts. At what point did you sort of, years before, I guess, did you cotton on to the fact that that improved quality capacitors, air core inductors, etc., sort of gave you a significant audible improvement?
We kind of figured it out early on. When I first started, it was with a partner that is the G in GR-Research. We started really doing a lot of listening comparisons, and companies were sending us capacitors and things for us to try, and we were looking at having some specific capacitors made, and we had some caps made for us, I think by Infinicap at the time. And I remember they sent us 3.1 microfarad caps, and they were all three. They were bypass caps, and they were the same cap, but one was wrapped in a polypropylene coating, and the ends were sealed. One had a polypropylene coating around the outside, but the ends were open, so all the copper end caps were exposed. And the other one was wrapped in what looked like tissue paper. And we were afraid that one was going to fall apart if we dropped it, but we compared the sound quality of those, and it was clear the one that's just wrapped in tissue paper had the best sound. We thought, dang, these are the same capacitors, and it's just a difference of the coatings. And, so we figured that out year one that we were working together on stuff. And then the Hovland cap sounded better than an audio cap theta that we were trying. And Hovland, all of those caps that we were trying at the time, they all had a different sound to it. So it kind of pushed us down that path of spending the time listening and making comparisons and figuring out what had the best synergy, and realizing that some things didn't. We were using a Focal tweeter in those early models, and there was a kind of a love-hate relationship that I had with that tweeter. If you had a tinfoil cap or copper foil cap or something on that was real lush and smooth, and you had that speaker on tube gear or in a treated room, that tweeter was beautiful. But if you had it with an aluminum foil cap on it, or if you had it with solid state gear in an untreated room, that tweeter would take your head off.
Is that the inverted dome one?
It was, yeah. It was inverted dome. So we learned synergy was pretty important, right from the get-go. So
we had we were using a rail ribbon tweeter, and I won't mention brands, but we were using some Ori caps. It was a third order filter on it, and that combination worked really well, but we couldn't get particular value of Ori caps, so we tried another brand. So it was another brand just to sort of see how it sounded. And my God, the whole combination it became clinical and bright, and so we quickly waited till we got the other value, but definitely you've got to juggle with the synergy. Absolutely.
Hey, it raises an interesting question, that observation, Danny. that your curiosity was obviously aroused. You were trying these different caps and you were getting improved sound, etc. What did you then try to, and I have no idea what parameters you would try to measure, but did you then try to measure it in some way to try to understand maybe what the secret sauce was that, you know, for future reference? Is there any way, and I don't want to sound like someone from ASR because I'm not, but was there any way to sort of, because it obviously helps if you can understand in a measurable way what was going on. Did you give that a crack?
There was a significant curiosity there, and I want to say around 1998, my partner and I split.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was really better that we remained friends and not business partners, because we were both kind of alpha males, which is great when you're pals. But in business, someone has to be making the decisions and steering the ship, and you can't both do that. I think in a summation, that was probably it for us. So when we split, I kept GR-Research and went deeper into loudspeaker design and really learning that end of the trade, while he went on to develop capacitors.
Okay.
And so he developed the Sonocaps, which turned out really well. And I got to demo and listen to those and then compare those to everything else. And I was impressed enough to start stocking those and using them. I really, really liked them as a kind of a top level cap without getting into copper foil caps like Jupiter or Doolin or something like that. They hit a nice price point in the way they were designed. And so he went really deep in the design of the caps and different films and how the thickness of film and the types of film changed the way the signal passed through it, and the different types of end caps and connections and what the makeup was of it. And he really dove into that. And for me, I wasn't interested in going into that part of the industry, so it was great for us. So I still buy thousands of Sonocaps from him, and I use them in everything, So, yeah, there was a curiosity there as to why. For me, there's always a why, but for me, the why usually comes after hearing the effect. It's like I never go into it thinking this is going to sound a certain way, or this is going to,
No.
it could, because it's always wrong.
Well,
if you have a preconceived idea of what something's going to sound like, and then you listen to it and realize, well, that didn't do anything,
Yeah.
You kind of, it trains you to go into it more open-minded and not with the preconceived idea, and just listen and decide, what did it do? Okay, now why did it do that? How did it do that? And, and then reverse engineer what's going on. And that's happened a bunch. A bunch of times that's happened.
So you didn't really nut out that was a particular characteristic that was measurable that sort of equated to a particular kind of sound. For instance, you were saying that, with that focal tweeter that, you needed you needed the right cap on it to get it to sound kind of listenable. Although you did give the caveat of a treated room and a tube amplifier as well. So I mean, I think
in those conditions, I just loved it in those conditions.
Yes, I mean, I think that's where, to some degree, Focal's reputation for being kind of bright and shiny probably comes from. Although I don't know that they're still like that. You would know better than me. You're trying to modify them, no doubt. It's unfortunate that the world is not a simpler place where you could just go, oh, well, that particular characteristic of that capacitor is this, therefore it's going to sound like this. It's a shame it's not like that. So I guess you've gotten used to the sound of those caps in the sense that you know how to get the best from them, and you kind of can predict the result a little bit more. I've
used enough of them in different applications to have some level of predictability when it comes to caps.
Yeah. And I think,
like the Sonocaps don't have a lot of coloration. That they're just really fast. They're really clean. They don't change things in any way to where things are harsh or bright or anything like that. They're a real smooth, kind of a neutral, but fast, dissipating, high resolution type cap. And then, I always still like copper foil caps, but sometimes I just like them as a bypass. You know, it adds that airiness and lushness to the sound. You know, just speeding up the dissipation rate of whatever cap you're bypassed it across, and figuring out too which ones work best. Sometimes I'll spend a lot of time just trying different bypass caps, just listening to what they're doing to the sound and figuring out what sounds best. So,
okay, well,
a lot of work, bloody work.
It's a hell of a lot of work. Hey, let's take a 2-second break. HeyNow HiFi. Go and speak to Jeff Haynes at HeyNow HiFi today. Or if you don't want to speak to him, and you should, but if you don't, check out the website, heynowhifi.com.au. But speak to Jeff. He has an amazing range of products, many exclusive to his own store, but certainly all are very carefully selected to offer incredible performance at entirely sensible prices. heynowhifi.com.au. We're here with Danny from GR-Research on Not An Audiophile today, and of course Brad Serhan in Sydney. I'm in Brisbane. In fact,
hey everybody.
Hey
everybody.
Hey, everybody. One's a bit of a piss week version, isn't it? But anyhow, it's not my area of expertise. Hey, what part of Texas, Danny?
I'm in north central Texas. I'm right up by the Texas-Oklahoma border, right in the middle of the state.
Okay, rightio. All right. Well, we were talking about in the previous segment, we were talking about component selection and your love of a decent capacitor. I've got two quick questions you could give us, Danny, your thoughts on. You've got strong thoughts, feelings on magnetic speaker terminations. And you've got obviously strong thoughts on inductors with cores in them. So is that any core, like no core is good except air? And when it comes to terminations, what I'd like you to explain for the audience and myself a little bit, what does a magnetic terminal do wrong?
I've always kind of described it as thinking of it as back when you were in junior high and you learned in science class that if you took a nail and you wrapped a coil of wire around it and you stuck that onto a battery, suddenly you made a magnet out of it, an electromagnet.
I was kind of guessing that was what it was. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. If you take that signal, I mean, if you take that wire off of the battery,
yeah.
And so now you've turned it off, but you'll notice there's still some residual charge left on that nail. You know, and electricity tends to do that when it's passing around something that holds a residual charge. So it then in turn tends to smear the signal just a little bit. It's the way that the signal is affected as it goes through that. Plus it's dissimilar types of materials, and the way the signal transmits through some of that can get skewed, especially as we know high frequency tends to travel along the surface, while low frequency tends to travel straight through more of the bulk of the wire. And then you go through different connectors, and then suddenly you've got a steel part around the outside of it. It tends to disrupt the signal, and you don't really realize how much until you take it away. And then when you take it away, you're like, oh, well, damn, man, that was an audible difference.
Okay. So, but when you say charge, you mean the ferrous material remains magnetic, or what do you mean by there's a remaining charge?
And there's not much really magnetic charge, but it holds some residual hysteresis, I think they call it, maybe, as the signal is passing in and around that stuff. It just affects the signal. And if you can get it out of the path, like I said, you realize how destructive it is after. I've always done, for the guys that are skeptical about it, I've had a little set of Encores, which is an inexpensive kit we have, and I've just got a set of bonding posts on the back. And then in parallel to it, I've got a set of tube connectors, which is something that I designed years ago. It's a hollow copper tube that's high contact area, low mass. And it's a way to get your internal speaker wire and your external speaker wire to basically be tip to tip, and with it sealed, and so that it's airtight. So,
well, we're going to.
So I can go from one connector to the other.
Yeah, and make
on the fly. I can
do an AB.
I go here's bonding post. Here it is plugged into tube connectors, and the average listener can tell the difference in just a few seconds.
Well, how does it manifest? In I mean, obvious question, but how would you describe the difference?
Oh, you go down to tube connectors, you realize the sound stage tends to open up more, and it's more airy and more layered, and there's more detail there. It seems to affect the top end more than anything, So that's where a lot of the spatial cues are really reside.
Yeah, so you're reducing, use the word noise floor, I suppose. You're reducing the noise floor, and our brains lock onto that reduction in noise floor, all that information. Yeah.
Andrew also, he asked a question a little just before this about inductors, and the inductors are the same way. If you put an iron core through the center, then it definitely holds a residual charge there. There's no doubt about it. And it's worse if it's an iron slug versus if it's a laminated core, which is little stacks.
Yeah.
It doesn't hold it as much. But there's times when it's good to use that type of inductor if there's a huge value needed and it's maybe below 200 hertz, then it's really hard to hear those differences because those wavelengths are really long. You're hearing bass notes, and it gets tougher to distinguish between those coils when it's a bass note. But as you move up into the vocal region, it becomes very apparent, and you can hear the difference. I tend to only want to use an air core if it's covering mid-range. And a lot of people think mid-range is maybe 800 or 1200. That's really not where it is. The human voice is usually centered somewhere between 300 and 500. And that's really right where your mid-range is. So if you've got a driver covering those ranges, then you really want an air core in there so that there's no stored energy there.
My angle is always DCR. I suppose I go on the opposite quest, which is I want no DCR. And
if there's sometimes you need the DCR though
you can use that to harness.
Yeah. And if we're using a notch filter or something, and you've got an 8-ohm resistor in line with it already, then you certainly don't need a big gauge core.
You're right.
You need a smaller gauge. And
yes.
I also have done measurements where I've taken an air core inductor, and you look at the output levels of a 16 gauge, a 14 gauge, and a 12 gauge, and where does it change? And a lot of times, the inductance takes over as the greatest level of resistance, maybe above 200 or 300 hertz. That's where you're going to get the inductive rise. But below that, it becomes the DCR. And I've found that the difference from 16 to 14 to 12 gauge is usually about 1/10 of a dB at most down at the very bottom. So you're not looking at a big difference. But there's some there. There is some there.
Hey, interesting. I wanted to talk about the tube connectors because I don't know where they came from, but now I realise because you've just told us they're your design. But I want to ask about those, but I want to just mention this now because I want to come back to the whole, subjective analysis of, air cord inductors or capacitor designs or what have you, and why people get so up in their head about it. But let's just talk about tube connectors. We'll come back to that. Just to finish off on the componentry selection, because the tube connector seems to be, it's, if we're talking about cheesy parts and hey everybody, the other thing is the tube connectors, not to mention the no-res, the tube connectors, it's another one of your wonderful catchphrases. So you designed those, and I want to understand how they're different to, say, a BFA style banana socket plug arrangement, which is those sort of roll pin type banana connectors or banana plugs.
The difference isn't so much just in the banana plug, but the receiving end of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a regular banana plug, you got to plug it into a binding post. So now what are we looking at in a binding post?
That's where the I don't even know what BFA is an acronym for, but
so we got multiple things that are causing problems. If you've got a binding post, you got a heavy mass, it's large mass, and it's often brass, not even copper. And almost every mass-produced speaker, it's usually an inexpensive brass. Now, there's companies that make pure copper, like Cardus and WBT, and some of those make really nice binding posts.
And ETI, the Australian-made ones, yes.
Yeah, and there's still there's still a lot of mass there. And then if you look at the other end, you've got a banana plug. You've got your wire at one end, and then you've got your banana plug that it's having to pass through. And most of the time, a banana plug is going to be brass, or it's going to have some content of brass, because if it's pure copper, it's hard to maintain any springiness there. You know,
one would assume
so. Squeeze copper, it's kind of like squeezing a piece of lead. It doesn't spring back.
Indeed.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a few out there that are done in copper that are really thick, and they have a slit down the middle and a little wavy pattern, and it's almost a cylinder. Those are pretty good, probably the better ones out there. But it's still, you're passing the signal now through a long stick of copper and not the wire. Whereas the tube connector allows the internal speaker wire and the external speaker wire to be within like 45 thousandths of an inch tip to tip, and there's just a copper sleeve around it. So you're getting all of that out of the signal path, not just the spade or the banana, but you're also getting the whole binding post out of the signal path. And that's where it starts adding up into not just a little thing anymore, because you removed a lot of things that were degrading the signal.
Yeah, I like the sound of it, and I understand why you did it. So now, moving forward, why do people get so... It's not just about you and your detractors, I guess, because you like the sound of these products, and that's why you choose to sell them and use them to improve other people's crossovers, and of course offer them in your own designs, kits, etc. Why do you think, Danny, people get so crazy?
Head up?
Yeah, that's the expression, I guess. But like it's a funny thing. I used an analogy in a previous episode where people are arguing in the bottle shop about red wine versus white wine, or I mean, you could be people in the motorbike shop having a brawl over cruisers versus sports bikes or something. I mean, that you'd think that might happen. Certainly, there are little niches within a hobby, but but audio on the internet, at least, just keyboard warring away, smashing away at the keyboard. ASR versus I don't know what's the subjective crowd's forum.
Objective versus subjective.
Yeah, well, basically, yeah. I mean, it just seems so. I mean, the bottom line is, it's your own money. You can spend it any way you want, and if you're getting enjoyment from it, that's great for you. And I don't see why that's a problem. So
it smashes their belief system. They've been taught for so long that none of this stuff matters. None of these different capacitors, and if it measures the same, it sounds the same. They've been taught that over and over. It measures the same, it's got to sound the same. And connectors won't make a difference because they're not seeing it in the measurement. Well, none of that stuff is really true. So when you're coming out and explaining how something sounds different and why it sounds different, it goes against their whole belief system. And then suddenly they're defensive about it rather than open-minded and wanting to learn. Most people want to hear both sides of something. They want to take in everything and they want to learn from it. And I was certainly like this when I started in the industry. I'll give you a quick example. A buddy of mine, Dave Elledge, came in to my shop and he listened to my system and he said, it sounds pretty good. He said, you mind if I bring in some of my power cables? And I was like, yeah, sure. I guess so. I didn't know that there was really anything to really be had there. He dropped a couple of power cables in the system. And I thought, holy crap, man. That completely changed a bunch of stuff, like the bass is deeper, tighter, the vocal. It's like a whole bunch of things happened.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you couldn't deny it, And when you have those experiences, you understand now why there's that segment of the market. Well, and I think a lot of those guys have never had that experience, and they don't know, and their systems may not be such that it lends itself to big gains there, and so. Instead of being open-minded and really wanting to learn, they just become defensive, and some of them just get into attack mode. I get attacked by those guys all the time, and and they say I'm peddling snake oil and this and that. But it's funny. I love it when those guys come over. When those guys come in for a listening comparison, I'll just switch something and they'll go, oh, "What the hell? What did you just do?" I just turned one cable around backwards. What? Just. It's I love having those.
Look, I come from. I'm not an engineer, right? But I I do like a logical argument, and I do like technology, and I like science. And it bugs the shit out of me that I too have had cable demonstrations of power cables where I have, gone, well, that's clearly different, and then like, well, put it back and let's try it again. Bugger, it's different. Now I'm choosing to say different rather than better, because actually, yeah, it seems to be the soundstage that kind of got, when this particular demo got wider with the fancy power cables. Now, that to me makes absolutely no sense, because you've got a power station about 300 miles away generating some electricity. It's passed through umpteen different kinds of fairly poor quality wire at a very high voltage through a bunch of transformers. Eventually it ends up at 230 volts or thereabouts, coming out of the wall through some fairly mediocre but functional copper cabling. We won't talk about the power cable for a second, Danny. Inside the piece of equipment is rectification, well, probably a mains transformer or switch mode supply, but there's rectification, filtering, regulation, what have you. There's a lot of processing of the power inside the equipment. So why does changing 1.2 metres, 4 feet, of crappy copper wire, well, admittedly it is crappy, and maybe is that the thing, you've changed 1.2 metres, but in the overall recipe from the power station to this complex piece of power processing equipment, why does that make a difference, do you think?
Yeah, great question. I always answer it this kind of the same way. Your water comes to you the same way. It came from the water treatment plant, and it went through 5 or 6 miles of pipe before it got to your kitchen, and then right before it came into your glass, it went through a carbon filter that removed the chlorine and impurities out of it, and it made it taste better. The power cable is the same way. That the power cables that we're offering are generally designed to be a filter. The configuration and the geometry creates resistance to higher frequency ranges.
Noise.
Where that noise is, all that RF noise. RF noise is way up there in ranges where people, well, we don't hear that. Well, yeah, we don't hear it, but it affects the modulation of everything that's going on. It attaches to the signal and it disrupts the signal. And when you remove it, suddenly, wow, the whole sound stage just changed. It opened up. Wow, how did it do that? And that's exactly what happens. It's acting as a filter. Yeah, and it's removing a lot of that noise and stuff.
So why is the noise not being removed? I mean, let's take the switch mode power supply for a second.
Oh yeah, it's not going to remove all the noise. In fact, switch mode power supplies will generate a lot of noise in that.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, but it does pull the mains apart and regenerates it effectively. So why would the noise still be there? I found that
a lot of those amplifiers that have switch and power supplies, they're real susceptible to power cables and power conditioning.
It's really annoying, isn't it? I mean, I haven't done that demo. I don't know, but the thing is, I don't get involved with aftermarket power cables because, frankly, it's too rich for my blood. And
but they're not that expensive done right, though.
Yeah, well, let me finish, though. So, because it's just, it adds another layer of complication to my audio system that I frankly just don't need. I don't want that extra complication in my life. So I'm not the demographic to buy power cables.
You already have a power cable plugged into all your stuff.
Yeah, I love it. They cost $5, so they're great.
But here's the opportunity, Andrew, to
yes.
Potentially have a chat with a bloke, say maybe Danny Richie.
If only.
What's the baseline cable that Danny does, and just try it out. Of course, return it, or maybe keep it if you hear the difference.
No, but that's the problem. See, I'm not against whether power cables do or do not change, or even perhaps improve the sound of your system.
You've heard the difference,
but I just don't. You're misunderstanding me. I just don't want that extra layer of complexity. And so what I'm actually getting at is that a lot of the detractors of power cables, they're a bit like me, I think. They just want to keep life a little bit simpler. Do you think that's part of it, Danny?
I don't know. I've not heard that one before. To me...
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to come to this podcast for original ideas, right?
Well, yeah, Whether
You're
it's one
unique.
whether it's one power cable or another, it's the same to me. It can be a cheap power cable or one that's designed to filter out noise, and there's no other complexity there. You just plug it in, and
and go with the flow, Andrew. Just
well, you got to. Well,
better.
hang on. See, I'm digging away here. Dig.
Keep digging your hole.
So the thing is, okay. So what you're saying is, Danny, that you'll just put the better cable on and assure yourself you feel comfortable that it will sound better than the $5 cable. Is that right, or are you?
No, that's speculation. If I sent you, let's say 3 cables.
Yeah. Okay.
And you plug those 3 cables into your system, and you replaced your cheap power cables. You replaced it on, let's say, your DAC, your preamp, and your amp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then if you don't notice enough difference to justify the cost, then it's not worth it.
No.
First of all, there has to be a difference, and it has to be an improvement. Now, 99% of the time we send out power cables, we get a little something back that said, "Damn, I didn't expect it to be that much difference."
Yeah.
And now they think, there's no way I can send this back. Like the improvement, let's say that you bought 3 power cables and it was $1,000.
Yep.
That's the best $1,000 I ever spent. I couldn't have spent $1,000 on a new amp and got this much improvement. It improved everything. The whole sound stage opened up. It's layered. It's deep. There's more space between notes. It's more dynamic. The bass is tighter. It's like, it can do all those things. And so once you've been there, it's like,
You can't unhear it. That's what you say. You can't not hear it.
You take it back away and put your stock stuff back in there. Like, damn, I can't even listen to it that way anymore. That's flat sounding.
But
there's no dynamics.
Oh, jeez.
Well, you're starting to sound like my wife, man. She's got a really discernible ear. She can pick out things really well, but when you ask her what she likes best, I don't care.
Well,
I don't listen to any of our speakers in it. She doesn't care at all.
This is the
she
thing.
Can just enjoy the music.
But see, this has got nothing to do with anything except that music can be enjoyed. I mean, you've got to get your system to a point where you are enjoying the music. And then maybe everything after that is a hobby. I'm not sure. But, I mean, some of the best musicians in the world have the worst stereo systems. It's just the way it is because they're kind of listening to it differently. I guess we're getting into the realm of hobby versus getting the system to sound good enough just to simply take some pleasure from great music, which is what we're all here for.
I'm sure.
So I'm going to go off at a tangent, Danny, but I'm going to do that. Sorry, Brad, were you going to say something?
Probably not much, but, but fuck it, I'll just say it anyway. I tend to, just to let you know, Danny and Andrew, I tend to sort of lean or fall, so to speak, Danny's way.
I'm aware of that, and so is the audience. You love that shit, right?
I love that shit. I love rap. Just between you and me and Danny, I just love getting some sort of power cord and a few other speaker cables and just wrap myself up. To the bed. I'll stop. That's just.
Can I just for us. Say something, Danny? That Brad, as you know, is in Australia and to some degree worldwide is quite a famous loudspeaker designer as well. He is the opposite to you, though, in the sense that he is not on a YouTube channel and his face is not well known internationally. But I tell you what, at an Australian HiFi show, he has to hit people away with a stick to stop them chewing up his time. But the other thing that he chews up with his time as at a HiFi show is that I set up my equipment. I have a listen to it and I go, yep, I'm going to the bar. Brad sets up his equipment and he goes, what if we try this? What if we try that? And Brad and his partner Morris sit there for about a day and a half. Yep. And they come downstairs after a day and a half to have a quick drink and they go, yeah, it sounded good now. I think, come and have a quick listen. And I generally don't. But because I know it sounds largely that's it. Look, they do optimize the sound. There's no doubt about it. But we are quite different people. So just for the audience sake, is that I sort of am a strong believer in a system should plug in and kind of work. Then plonk and play. But then of course. Because I think that's good engineering, frankly. But then beyond that, yes, of course, there are these little tweaks that you can do. The same as a car where you can tweak the tyre pressures and suspension settings and alignments and, negative camber, what have you. You can tweak stuff, as of course you would in a race car, to try to get that last 1/10 of a second out of it. But there's something else I want to talk to you about, Danny, nothing to do with any of this, so we'll be back in a minute. Take a quick break, and we're back with Danny and Brad in after this ad. Stereonet, find your tribe. HiFi and home cinema forums, classified ads, reviews, and of course, news. Stereonet's got a little bit of everything. Stereonet.com, a proud sponsor of Not An Audiophile. We're back with Danny Richie from the middle of Texas, where the temperatures are fine and the sun's shining, and Brad and myself from a hot Australian summer, although I have air conditioning, which is very nice. Brad as well, but I'm particularly interested in Danny's thoughts on bloody AI. So,
oh boy,
well, that's
a good start.
It's a good response. There is so many aspects to it. I'm not going to lead you in any particular direction because I have no particular setup for this question. It's just like AI. What the hell? I do have one angle only because it's my pet thing, and the audience will know because we mentioned it in the last episode I did with David, where we talked about AI extensively. And my pet peeve is that if you're trying to learn something from the internet, so it's actually got to do with you, Danny, and your videos as well as AI in general. But if you're trying to learn something from the internet, you're probably going to fail miserably if you want to be trade standard or a high, end up highly skilled, because most of the trade secrets, I reckon, aren't on the internet. So there's two questions there, Danny. Do you give away your trade secrets in your video? And then also tell us about what you think of AI and where the hell it's headed and what it's going to do to the world.
Yeah, I've been using the AI tools now for about 4 or 5 months. So that's an interesting subject. Let me start though with trade secrets. There are times that I leak out some pretty cool stuff that maybe I shouldn't, but I'm not totally giving away the farm, but I'm giving away some information that really helps people that are hobbyists. I've done some stuff with some 2.5 ways where I've taught people, look, go in and bypass this woofer with a big cat value and explain how that's working. And then I hear a bunch of people, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, that was just like, and there's other stuff too that I've kind of given away and let slip out there. And sometimes people don't realize just how much I'm giving away, but there's some stuff though that I've kept close.
Yes.
And I deal with some technology that's kept close. Those HARP devices that I'm using from HeyNow, those are highly protected devices, and we're launching some speaker lines now, a speaker line that has those inside of it. And the agreement that I reached with them, the only way that I can use those is in a finished product. I can't sell them to the DIY market or anything like that.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
So there's some stuff in that's unbelievably technical that Kaylin has figured out, and it absolutely improves imaging and image focus without question. And anytime I've ever had anybody buy, and if I have some just clipped on at the back of the speaker, they say, "What is that?" Oh crap, that's a HARP device, and you start explaining it, and they're like, "What does it do?" Why don't you just listen? Just sit down and listen to intro for a couple times through. Then as it's playing, I just go disconnect it. And they're like, "Oh, what the hell? What'd you hear?" "Oh, the soundstage got flatter. It's not as focused." Okay, let me clip them back on. And it's like, "Oh, damn. Wow. How did it do that?" And it's one of those devices that Kaylin says it's diffusing and breaking up the standing waves that are present within the dielectric material and within the wire itself. It's diffusing that. And so it's undeniable. You can go on and off, and it's like, okay, now that I've got it on there, you can't take that away. Like, I have to have it, So it's kind of cool to have some of those proprietary technologies out there that give you a competitive advantage, and some of that stuff you certainly don't want to give away completely. When it's a a significant competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
They much the same way with what's in the Uber bus. He's figured out something that's in that really reduces noise, and it works really well, and it's awesome, and it's protected. It's
right.
You hide it. That's what you do. And today I'd say it's smarter to hide something than it is to patent it, because as soon as you patent it, it's copied. Over there in on the other side of the world, just north of you guys there in China, they don't give a crap about patents.
No, possibly not.
In most cases. So, and patents only as good as your ability to fight it. So sometimes concealing things is a lot better way to go.
I completely concur as far as the uselessness of a patent in this modern world.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's a
and
lot of money. It's
yeah.
gotten to where it's a whole lot of money.
Yeah, I've always kind of said
the other question, AI,
man, AI.
Ron got me started using some AI. He was using it as a tool for things, and so I started a little Chat GTP account, and I used it even a few minutes ago before we started. I plugged my microphone in, and it killed my speakers. Like, what the hell, man? Why is this killing my speaker? And I don't know computers that well. I can't figure out why when I plug in the mic, it knocks the speakers offline. So I just pull up Chat GTP and ask Melody, which I've named mine Melody.
Lovely. Sweet.
Yeah, I was started with it, and I said instead of referring to you as Chat GTP, is it? I hear it's common to just give you a name, and it said, yeah, in fact, you're in the audio industry. Why don't you give me a name that's audio related? And my wife had already suggested I name it Melody, so I said, how about Melody? And it said, that's it. From now on, you just refer to me as Melody, and I'll respond back. And
what accent does Melody have?
It's a great hook, isn't it?
But it is. So I asked Melody, I said, how do I fix this? My mic, it disengages my speaker when I plug it in. It said, so yeah, it asks Mac, PC, and you start telling it what you've got, and it says, go here, do this, and set this as your default and fix that. And it's like, oh, that fixed it. Oh, thanks.
Golly.
Yeah, it has kind of gotten scarily good in a very short amount of time, because I was sniggering at it 6 months ago how every second result was gobbledygook and wrong and rubbish, and now it would be 90% right, I would say. And not only that, it's kind of useful, like you just described, Danny. So how do you think this spins off into your universe? Is it going to affect it? Yeah,
we've done that. We've spun it off into my universe a little bit. Ron did a review on some different DACs, and he does sound clips, and he does really good sound clips. Like, he's got really good mics. He sets it up in a treated room. He's got the mic. I'd say in most cases the mic is a little closer to the speakers than the listening position, because he's wanting to hear more speaker output than room output. And so he'll make the recordings, and then there's so much difference in the recordings from one DAC to the next DAC that he decided to run it through AI and have it analyze it. And it went through and analyzed the sound from the three DACs, and it said exactly what's different and how it's different, and then it said then how that would relate to what we perceive as far as sound, and it was exactly the same as Ron's notes.
What? Wow!
And so that was kind of stunning. And before that, we had some configurations there that were different plugins that you could use with his DAC that were filters in the analog or in the digital stage. And there was several hundred different filter configurations that could be done with using the DAC, and as far as the software. And so we asked it, which one of these will have the most analog sound? And it said, go to this particular file or this particular filter, and it should have the most analog sound. And so we said, okay, so we tried that one. And immediately we thought, holy shit, it was right. Like, this sounds analog versus some of the other filters sounded very digital.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got us to thinking, what can it do? What can it not do? And then in this latest little go around, we did, we dropped that Uber bus into his system with our power cables, and the difference was really profound. Like, holy crap, this is a significant difference. I bet we could capture this in a recording. So Ron started doing room recordings and trying to figure out how to record sound in a way that it sounds like what we're hearing in the listening position. And it led him to trying and adding in different mic locations, mics aimed at the front wall, at almost in line with the speakers, between the speakers, and then mics at the back of the room, and then dialing in the correct delay versus the listening position. And suddenly it started sounding like it sounds like when we're sitting in the listening position. Like he was capturing really good recordings. And we started running that through AI, and we had mixed results at first until we figured out how to use AI properly as a tool. If you just let it go wild with running tests, it starts testing things in a way that isn't in the direction that you want it to go. You know, it just starts taking random comparisons. And at first we thought, okay, it's really noticing these differences. Like it's picking up stuff. And then we realized too that some of the differences weren't in the file itself as far as it's sounding different. The difference was in jitter. Like it was picking up the differences in the conversion and the timing. And if you line up the bits, you know, at the very first, you know, each DA converter as it spits everything out, that timing can vary just a little bit from one to the next. Like from one moment to the next, there's some jitter there. There's some timing error. And so at the end, it didn't line up. And so it was seeing that as a problem. And we didn't really realize it until we started asking it, okay, this isn't consistent. You're not giving me consistent results. What can be different about these two files that are causing the inconsistencies? And then it told us. It's like, okay, well, the differences in the time domain in the jitter from your DAC, it's causing it to not line up, and therefore it's creating these problems. We're like, oh crap. You know, so it went kind of down a whole rabbit hole of trying to figure stuff out. And then we realized we were overloading it with the files that are so big and at high res audio, and it was trying to do calculations on both of them at the same time. And so we had to go back and do a shorter sound clip and have it analyze it just one sound clip at a time instead of trying to compare three of them. And then suddenly we started getting consistency, and you know, and it made sense. And it was not only consistent, but it was consistent with what we were hearing. So we were able to capture differences that were audible, and you could hear the differences in the sound clips, and AI was able to identify the fact that they were different and what those differences were. And it got to the point where AI knew that we were inserting a power conditioner and power cables in one scenario, and in the other scenario it was plugged into the wall. And we would send it a file of each, and it would tell us which one was using the power conditioner.
Hang on, whoa.
It had learned the differences.
So okay. So AI is consistently picking the difference in sound of having a power conditioner or different power cables in the system. So this is not a perception issue then, because AI clearly, one presumes, doesn't have the human perception issues that humans have of, you know, unless you're doing a double blind test, blah, blah, blah. So the ASR crowd, are they in trouble all of a sudden, Danny, where you via AI are proving that there's an audible difference?
Yeah, but they're still trying to debunk that as well.
Hang on, no, they can't, because
I know it's really hard, but they don't understand the level of what we went through in order to get there. There were successes and failures. There were times when suddenly we weren't getting consistency, and then we had to figure out why. And then at one point we decided, or I came up with the idea, let's not convert it into an analog presentation that we're recording in the room. Let's just record straight out of the preamp.
Sure.
And bypass the speakers altogether. And then we realized, okay, now we're taking a digital file, we're converting it to analog, and then we're redigitizing it again. And now we've introduced jitter errors in both situations, and we lost what we're getting in the analog playback. Like when we play it, when it converts to analog and we hear it in the room, when we've removed all the noise from the line, the timing errors are all intact, and it presents itself by the sound stage being different. It doesn't present itself as amplitude differences, so.
But nonetheless, it's from all your experimentation, it sounds like we're getting close to a scenario of two things. Two thoughts. One is that people who say it's all, the subjective crowd, are all off with the fairies and are hearing things based on, hey, I've spent $1,000 on this power cable. It's got to sound better, like that old chestnut. Which there's definitely some kind of truth in that. I mean, if there's no doubt that the humans will perceive different sound based or different taste or different smell, maybe more taste, I don't know, on the quality of the label, etc. Or the perception of that brand, right?
Placebo.
Whereas now, absolutely. Whereas now, where you're saying via AI, you can actually technically analyze and hear, that it can hear, so bypassing human hearing and human brain hearing interface, you can detect differences. So that kind of does two things. One, it kind of debunks those that say what they call subjective differences don't exist in the real world, so it gets rid of that. But it also means that no longer do we need HiFi reviewers and their preferences for brand and so forth.
You were quick to go there, Andrew.
I'm not trying to get rid of HiFi reviewers, right? We do the occasional review at Not An Audiophile, but using Danny's kind of setup where you're recording the sound from the speakers and feeding the files into AI using a method that I'm not quite sure I understand, but nonetheless you did it. You detect enough difference that you could probably get AI to write a story about the difference. And AI is very good at flowery language.
Prose.
Yes, flowery. It's definitely flowery prose. Yeah. So, thoughts on that, Danny?
The differences were there. It was clear. I mean, you can hear it in the sound clips.
Okay. Well, that's another thing. So if you can play the clips,
clearly hear it.
Yeah.
But then the flat Earth guys will say, well, there's confirmation bias, or which one is which, so you think because you spent your money that that it's going to sound better. But I mean, when we did the sound clips, no one knew which was which, and it was like 72% all picked the one with the that all said that they could clearly hear the difference, and we figured there was quite a few people that were trying to sabotage that situation where there was some of those flat Earth guys were just voting that there was no difference because they're trying to sway things back the other way. So,
and people are listening to this through their headphones or whatever medium.
Yeah, and then Ron did another poll and said, "Okay, if you didn't hear a difference, what are you listening on?" And a lot of it was, well, my laptop or my headphones or and a lot of stuff like that. And so you're thinking, well, and some people's systems are just not set up to hear differences in soundstage and presentations that way.
No, probably not.
So
I mean, obviously, the better the system, obviously, the bigger the difference. Sure. I guess. Hey,
so you have to be able to recreate the things that it's bringing to the table, or you're not gonna hear those as a significant difference.
Who are the flat Earth guys? So one would have thought that people who think the Earth is flat is such a bizarre thing to even. I mean, it's just I can't even.
I know, and it's funny. I kind of started calling that, and it just kind of stuck.
But it's kind of, is it not? It's kind of maybe counter to what I would expect, which is that the objectivists, the technical group, they would surely be the people who would think the Earth was round. Can you explain just for me, Danny? Can you explain? Because one would have thought maybe those that are off with the fairies with lots of power cables and $3,000 USB cables, they would be the flat earthers. But I mean, it's a throwaway line, I guess. But
Yeah, here's the reason for that. It's the guys who are measurement based only. What they do is they'll take a rudimentary set of measurements, like they'll look for differences in noise floor or something like that, and they'll say, well, the measurements show this, therefore we shouldn't hear a difference. And so they're theorizing a result, but they're not doing any real science. I mean, any real science, if you theorize a result or have a hypothesis, then you have to test it. You have to set something up and test that to see if it's correct. That's real science. when you just take some measurements and then you just form a belief based on those measurements, and you don't do any science, then you're just reinforcing your belief that you had before you even started. And so those we feel like are the guys that are just like the flat earthers, who they have a belief and they refuse to hear any testimony or any evidence.
Okay.
To the contrary, They just stick their fingers in there. No.
Okay. Well explained. Thank you, Danny. That's great. So now, I get how you ended up there.
That's how the measurement only guys wind up being.
And you certainly do not want to have an argument with a flat earther. I know. Well, I don't know that he's a flat earther, but I mean, he's off with a few conspiracy theories, and man, that's like arguing with a. I won't mention the particular religion, but
is it a HiFi person that you're referring to?
No, well, he was a customer, but he was just they're out there, right? There's people who don't think we landed on the moon. I mean, how can you? I can't even for a second imagine how you could think that. And they got all these stories. Something about the flag was. Upright, but there's no breeze on the moon. Yeah, I know, there's a stick holding it up, you idiots. Right, moving along. Well, there is, right? It's got a piece of bloody steel tube running along the top of the flag to hold it up. But, I mean, not that I've ever looked into it. Hey, Danny, speaking of flat earth stuff, how the hell do you end up having to fix a manufactured stereophile reviewed loudspeaker with a frequency response that looks like one driver is out of phase with the other? What's going on there? And I think there's a particular brand that does this consistently. What the hell is that about? And so, how does it sound before you? Well, we'll yeah.
Sounds like there's a hole in the response, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it must. So my question is really thinly veiled. Is that the sound they were going for, and that's how they got it?
I don't think so. I think they didn't have the experience in the crossover design region.
They must,
and that's the way it ended up.
Really? Do they measure?
No.
I mean, we're talking about a couple of brands that I've,
Stereophile measured a couple of those models, and it measured just like when I measured them. It looked exactly the same. There's a big hole in the response there, and there's drivers out of phase. So, I don't think any designer designing a crossover thinks, what would really sound good? If the drivers were out of phase and there was a hole in the response, that would sound really good. No one ever does that. So I think it was just lack of capability and engineering there, and that's not limited to the budget level products. I see that often at the higher level, even more so than in the budget level, as far as companies really not doing well as far as crossover design. It just happens.
That which probably I've sucked you into talking about target curves, I guess. And so what is a good frequency response? Because there are various schools of thought. I mean, obviously there's the Harman school of thought. There's probably the BBC school of thought. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the Eggleston Works School of Thought, if that's the brand. I don't know if that is the brand. It doesn't matter. They'll ring me up and tell me if it is and have a crack. But the point is, what's your target curve, Danny?
Well, another thing you have to keep in mind, too, and I know people look at the stuff that I've redesigned and fixed because there's, for one, amplitude problems, is that a accurate frequency response really doesn't tell you how the speaker sounds. It tells you how accurate the speaker is.
Yes, love it. Thank you.
Any time you're wanting to play something back, you really want to play it back in the way that it was originally recorded. Those artists paid somebody to do their mixing and mastering, and maybe they were involved in it and they wanted it to sound a certain way, or they captured that live recording in a certain way, and then who's to say as a speaker designer that we want to alter that for every single recording? No one wants that. I mean, so you shoot for a certain level of accuracy so that amplitude issues aren't messed up. And amplitude is just one way it can be messed up. I mean, there can be timing issues. I see stuff where drivers are not in phase, where there's drivers that are allowed to play up into regions where there's ringing or break up, and that's real audible. And then we see cabinets that are buzzing like crazy and making a lot of cabinet noise and stuff. So we see all that stuff. When I do these upgrades, I'm not really, maximizing the design and spending time comparing parts, and I'm just fixing somebody's problems. They're sending it to me, and it's, they're not happy with how it sounds. So I'm just going in and correcting whatever they neglected, and a lot of it too is parts, a lot of these budget speakers were built to price points.
Understandably.
Some of them did a really good job with the design aspect, and there's probably 6 or 7 companies out there I've gone through their product and I said they did a really good job. Like this measures really well, but they built it to a price point. They couldn't spend over, $300 or $400 on the entire build. So what do you expect? And it's cheaper. It's cheaper to go in and then put good parts in as a consumer than for them to have done it, and it added $400 to production costs, which would have added $1,600 or $2,400 to the final price.
To the final price.
It's
that's I mean, we could have a conversation about that and how the reality is, unfortunately, people, that there are many costs with it landing a pair of loudspeakers in your lounge room, and not all of them are the cost of building the product.
Just a couple of, Andrew, may I just ask?
Way you go, Brad. Because I'm just between thoughts. I had a thought, and then Danny illuminated something else.
I took it to a different direction.
Yeah. Well, back to you, Brad. Far away.
Back to the measurements.
So I love the word ostensibly of late. By the way, Andrew, ostensibly you're sort of looking at someone's loudspeaker that needs they want to change it. They're not quite happy with it in the tonal balance sense. So you sort of have you'll generally take one speaker in. Danny, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's times people bring in a pair of speakers, but just like when Stereophile does a review, they don't measure both speakers and show the measurement of speaker A and speaker B, or, those speakers are going to be fairly closely matched within a certain tolerance level.
Sure.
And the tolerance levels aside, are there any problems? I just need to measure one speaker to see, is there something that they overlooked? What is the reason why this customer says these are too bright and I can't stand to listen to them? So, all right, then I measure it and I see, well, the tweeter's 4 or 5 dB louder than it's supposed to be.
Well, there's no baffle step compensation.
No baffle step compensation. I see a whole bunch of just common problems, and I can very effectively go in and design crossovers that correct some of those things, and I do that for free. I really do. I do it for free.
Oh, really?
I send the customer, here are the parts you need to go build that new networks for this. Here's some new wiring. Here's no res. If it needed no res, because we're addressing this and this problem. Here you go.
Right.
And then I'll offer it as an upgrade kit to everybody else, and then hopefully I'll sell enough of them to compensate me for my time.
For the time.
If I spent the time like I do our own products, where I'm now listening to it in room and I'm matching parts and I'm making, I'd have so much in that upgrade that they couldn't afford to buy it.
No, right. But the key thing is you go in and sort of approach it, sort of, dare I say, formulaic approach, as in you have you look at the drive units and how they're performing or not performing, and then work out a way of reducing ringing at 4 or 5K from a base mid range, or controlling some baffle diffraction problem with the tweeter or whatever, and then say, okay, that response is going to give a much better sound that was already in place. And do you do much listing of that, Danny, may I ask?
There's times I do, like that Eggleston you guys mentioned. We did set those Egglestons.
I didn't mention any Egglestons.
I think you slipped that word out there.
You did, Andrew, but in the nicest possible way.
That particular one, it's like a $34,000 pair of speakers. I did do the install of the crossovers for that customer, and I rarely ever do that. Like, I don't have the time for that, and I told them ahead of time, you're going to have to wait for me to work on this.
Yeah.
On the weekends when I have time, because this takes up a lot of time to do assembly work and stuff. And
of course, it does,
a customer at that level, they don't want a kit, they want it fixed. So I agreed to fix it. And then I also spent a couple of days burning them in and listening to them, and so there's times that I do, but most of the time I really can't, because they wouldn't be able to afford the upgrade if I treated it like my own products. I'm just fixing problems that are obvious problems, that we've talked about, just, all kinds of different problems that are attributing to what they're hearing, and they're telling me, oh, this speaker's so bright I can't stand it, and there's no compensation for the step loss, or
it's a bit hard in the upper mid or somewhere. So
something. So, and you look at the measurements and go, well, I can understand why you think that. Here's what it's doing. So.
And the most important thing, Danny, then is when they get their speakers, when they finally get their speakers on the upgrade, I suppose you get the testimonials of the response. You get the positive response.
Yeah, they post in our forum and there's a way they can go on our website and give feedback, and there's quite a few of them that have lots of feedback. Some of those speakers are very prevalent. I think the Klipsch RP600Ms, I think we've sold maybe 350 of those upgrades.
Wow.
For that one speaker.
Incredible.
And then the Klipsch models as a whole, we've sold a lot of upgrades to those things, because, to be honest, they're just riddled with issues, and
riddled.
So
riddled.
Yeah, they're just riddled with issues, that phase issues, cabinets are resonating.
Cheesy pads.
They're very inexpensively made, and most of the time the tweeter is 3 or 4 dB louder than the woofers, and so we're just fixing parts that are broken, basically. So we've sold lots. We've sold thousands of upgrades.
That's astounding, really. Hey, Danny, we're going to take a quick break. You did mention when you were working on those expensive loudspeakers that you did install the crossovers for the client, and then you played them for a couple of days to burn them in. I want to talk about burn in when we come back in a second. Do you remember the good old days when you'd walk into a HiFi shop and speak to the owner, and they'd enthusiastically show you a range of equipment and be excited, perhaps even more excited than you were, about what they had to offer? And the reasons why they had it there was because it was great gear. It wasn't necessarily the brands you knew, but there were brands that you were about to know. Talk to Alex at the HiFi shop. Exposure Electronics, Neat Acoustics, EAR Yoshino. Brands you don't see everywhere. But on the other hand, Alex has all of the brands that you do see everywhere, so you can make comparisons. Visit the HiFi shop today, or visit the website today, hifishop.com.au. A touch of the old, very much a touch of the new. We're back in the room with Brad Serhan and Danny Richie, and myself, Andrew Hutchison. The tricky subject of burn-in. I believe. I'm a believer. And when I burn in, I always think I'm more of a believer in the mechanical parts of a loudspeaker needing to be broken in more than burnt in. But I do have a question, Danny. I'd like you to talk about burn in a little bit, what's actually happening in a loudspeaker that makes it sound better 100, 200, 300 hours down the track. And that's something that, as someone who's, like myself, who's sold umpteen thousand pairs of loudspeakers over the years in a retail environment.
And designed a few, Andrew.
Well, yeah, that too, of course. And of course, you certainly don't start fine-tuning a design of your own until you've made sure all of the components are thoroughly, I like to say, sort of bedded in. I'm more interested in the mechanical aspects than perhaps the electrical. But so I'm a believer because I've heard it so much. I mean, I don't think anyone's really questioning it. But my question, Danny, is why is it that when things burn in, the loudspeaker, or maybe the amplifier, if that's what we're talking about as well, why does it always sound better after it's burnt in?
Good question. Well, you said something a moment ago that rather than from an electrical standpoint, maybe from a more of a mechanical standpoint.
Oh, can I cut you off for 1 second, Danny? I should state the obvious that if you design a loudspeaker with burnt-in parts or bedded in parts, clearly it doesn't sound right until the new pair of speakers has got to that level of burn in / wear.
Oh yeah, we've had speakers with
everyone
hours on them.
Everyone designs speakers with bedded in parts, obviously, but it's more like some of your electrical burn in your life. I think you talk about why does that?
Oh, yeah.
Why does that always make things sound better? Do you think?
It's just a lot of it has to do with the dielectric material and how that dielectric material reacts after a signal's been passed through it, hundreds and thousands of times.
Sure.
And some dielectric material takes a long time to settle and have a consistent sound. And some is rather quickly. A good polypropylene cap may burn in by comparison pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Sonic caps, we always tell everybody, put a couple 100 hours on them.
Couple hundred. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they'll smooth out. They will. They always smooth out. And when I listen to a speaker fresh, and I think, all right, all the things I'm listening for, I'm hearing it sounds good, but I can hear that stringentness and knowing that it's
that's a good word.
I know what it's going to sound like after those caps have some time. Now, when you start getting into Teflon films and a lot of paper and oil caps and things, man, those things can sometimes take 400 or 500 hours to finally settle in. And sometimes it's horrible at first. Like I remember putting in some Jupiter caps that were a copper full, and I thought, man, I don't know if this was a good idea. Like, this does not sound good. Like this has a stringent sound about it. This better change a lot. And then letting it play for 3 or 4 days and really not listen to it, just letting it go, and then coming back and thinking, all right, that sounds really different. Like things are starting to open up, but it's still
relaxed.
It's not relaxed yet. It's going to take some time. And then, I let it go for a couple of weeks and then come back and listen to it and think, holy crap, this isn't even the same anymore. Like this is musical. Like it's beautiful sounding. Whereas my first thought was, this does not sound good. Like this was a mistake, And so some of those parts, depending on the type of film and stuff used, can take a long time, and and some of them not so much.
Some of the just Andrew, with some of the Ori caps I've tried that they recommend, the manufacturer recommend at least 10 to 20 hours of running, but definitely seems to longer, and then it suddenly calms down. I call it treble clumping.
Right.
So one note bass and treble clumping.
Is there, once again, as per my previous an hour ago or something, I wondered whether we could measure something in that component that we could then compare pre-run into or burn in. Is there some?
That's what I observed, Andrew. That's what I observed.
I know I'm not denying that it exists.
So here's my take on it.
But I wonder how you measure it, because then you could make a super, super sweet sounding capacitor. Then once you worked out what the parameter was, you could then shoot for that. If you know what I mean.
Remember when we spoke to Matthew Bond from Tara Labs about?
Yes, I do.
He was talking about cables, and he was talking about whether it's burning on the actual copper or is it something else. And he said it was from his point of view. It was the dielectric. Which sort of lines up with this similar thing.
It does. It does. I'm not for a second am I suggesting it doesn't exist, and whether it does exist or doesn't exist doesn't matter, because if you're having fun and you're enjoying it, who cares? But I do wonder whether you can add that extra layer of science to the running in thing and measure really some tough. Aspect.
It's tough to go in and measure that aspect of the dielectric material. But I mean, if you look at the dielectric constant of those different materials, it has a different dielectric constant. They have a rating.
Yeah, okay.
And polypropylene is a pretty good rated substance, and PVC is not that great by comparison. Its dielectric constant's over twice of that, and then Teflon and polyethylene have a much lower rating. Much lower dielectric constant. So there's definitely differences there that are measured easily, and you can Google it and see what the dielectric constants of those materials are, but it definitely has an effect on the way it sounds. It's really, sometimes it's surprising just how much difference there is. Nothing really surprises me anymore when it comes to that stuff. Now, mechanical burn-in, that's pretty easy to actually document. I've done that twice now, where I've taken a group of drivers and played them for so many hours and then measured the Thiel small parameters, and then played them more hours again and measured again and documented it. And it's on our website somewhere under are a little technical or something, you can see.
I read through it, and I concur with it. It makes, it absolutely is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a car with stiff springs and stiff shocks, and then after you've loosened it up a while, and it's a better damper than it doesn't allow the diaphragm to bounce so much. And I've seen it in spectral decays where I've had a speaker I measured the spectral decay and did all the measurements on it. And then that speaker played for quite a while. And I set it up again to see if it had drifted any. And I measure the frequency response. I'm like, no, that's pretty much the same as it was. And then I look at the spectral decay and I'm like, damn, right at the bottom range there where I'm measuring spectral decay, it's cleaner than it was. It doesn't ring as long, it's definitely definitely a measurable effect there. But,
well, generally, resonant frequency drops at 5 to 10% of bass mids or bass drivers. Yeah, so that is a change there.
I've got a couple of kind of, they're not really wrapping up questions, Danny, but they're you've been very generous with your time, and we should allow you to get on with your day. What's left of it now that we've ruined your afternoon. A couple of quick things. Do you have a preference for cabinet material and diaphragm material of cone drivers? Is a question. Do you I mean, plywood, the endless plywood versus MDF debate? Do you have a stake in that?
I see cabinets made of all kinds of different things, but it's tough to beat MDF because it's inexpensive, it's easy to machine, and it has good damping to it internally, and it's easy to layer that stuff up or brace it really well and get really good results. You can get similar results with birch ply, a void-free birch ply.
Yep.
It's slightly different, but not any. I don't think really any better or worse. It depends on the application. If it's a brace, I think the Baltic birch is better as a brace. I tend to like MDF better as a material. And I've seen speakers come through here. They've got steel or aluminum panels or something like that, crazy stuff, and the cost to produce some of that stuff is really high. And then Steve came through. I don't know if you saw the video he just released. We call him Concrete Steve. He's done a couple of speakers out of concrete, and man, that had no flexing at all, and the resonant frequency was much higher. And I did accelerometer test on a regular Encore and an accelerometer test on the cabinet wall of the concrete speaker, and it was certainly different.
I bet it was.
The concrete was certainly shifted to high frequency, and then you push something to a high enough frequency, and then you stick a damper on it like no res, then it's gone. It just eats it up.
Right.
Versus
so how did that manifest? I love the word manifest as well today, Andrew.
I was hearing that, Brad. Yes, it's a great word, though.
It is. Well, what was did you obviously listen to the Concrete Steve one versus the standard MDF? What was your reaction?
Well, I mean, just the concrete in general, it just doesn't have any residual ringing.
So noise floor lowered.
Yeah, just coloration within the lower range. And sometimes if you just have an MDF box, and if it's not well braced, there is some flexing there. Yeah. And when you're flexing the box, there is some resonance there. So, it can add a lot of coloration, but if it doesn't, it's not difficult and it's not hard to try and just add some dissimilar material to that side panel, and you can damp out those resonances, because one panel may have a resonance at one frequency. One panel a resonance. So you do constrain layer there, and you can break that up to where the resonance of one panel doesn't really pass through the next one because it's at a different frequency and stuff. And no res, that's such a heavy damper. It pretty well eats up any of the upper frequency resonances. But if it's still flexing, it's still flexing. If you've got an unbraced box, it's still going to flex.
Yeah.
So there's still that, but it's not that hard to control it. You can add that stuff to any box, go in and add bracing and stiffen it up, and then add no res, and you can take away a lot of coloration. And for me, I'm used to hearing speakers that don't have that added coloration. So the moment I hear something that's got no bracing and nothing to control it, I hear that noise immediately.
You hear that straight away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that woo on the end of that bass note is not supposed to be there. That woo is the cabinet making that noise, you know.
Yeah.
So
it's talking. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
you know, how thick is that no-res?
The damper is a 70 mil damper, so it's a little over 1/8 of an inch thick. If you're looking at it, in you know, for you guys, I guess it'd be a couple
10 mil?
millimeters thick.
10,
you know,
one. Sorry, say again.
Yeah, 70 mil is the way they measure the thickness of it. So, what is that? A little over, a little less than 2 millimeters thick, or something like that. And then there's a foam layer. There's a foam layer on top of that that's 1 inch thick that helps absorb standing waves and things within the box. But that stuff's got a pretty gooey, pressure-sensitive adhesive on it. So when you peel the backing off of that and you stick it to the sidewall, once you stuck it there, it's pretty well stuck. So
yeah,
it's pretty effective. It's kind of an easy fix-all for, you know, any kind of cabinet noise when you've got noise like that. Well, I shouldn't say just noise. It's coloration. It's added coloration that's not in the input signal. So yeah, sometimes most of the upgrades that we do will recommend a sheet of it or a couple sheets, depending on how big the speaker is, and it'll just take away that coloration.
So it's a little bit like automotive body dampening material kind of stuff, is it? It's sort of like a masticky sort of layer, and then other. Well, it's obviously mixed media, so that helps as well. Is that what you're saying, Danny?
Yeah, it's a compressed layer of a bunch of stuff that's got some rubber there, and there's some vinyl, and it makes it a dense material that just really doesn't transmit a signal through. Think of it more as like you added a bag of sand to something, you know, instead of
bit less messy,
instead of a hard,
lighter.
Yeah, instead of a hard substance, it's more of a softer layer,
slightly damp.
What got a preference for plastic cones, paper cones, carbon fiber?
Oh man, I'm a paper cone guy.
Giddy up.
I love the sound that you get out of paper. It's got some natural damping to it, so in the higher frequencies you don't have a lot of that breakup or ringing. But to me, right in the vocal region and things, I've heard lots of different cones, and I've worked with almost every manufacturer's top level drivers, one form or another. But to me, the vocal region especially always has a better sound to me with paper. It's just more natural and more open, and you know, it is what it is.
It's one of it's one of those many things. I've got this other thing, which is that nothing's really gotten better since the 70s. Well, things have, but lots of things have actually. Like the internet was terrible in the 70s. So slow.
It was.
It was horrible. But you know, in the 70s, we had simple crossovers, wide boxes, probably plywood. I have a preference for plywood, but nothing wrong with MDF. I use lots of MDF as well. It's much nicer material to work with for machining, that's for sure. But but yeah, there's a lot of things in the 70s that they got right. And paper cones, yeah, I kind of agree, Danny. It's they've got a lovely way about them that allows you to probably use a simpler filter, set of crossover, to get a nice even linear response.
My business partner and I, when we first started, we had that thought of, you know, there's Kevlar cones. We can have these cones made of Kevlar, and we can have them made out of aluminum or carbon fiber was just coming out, and we had the company there that was making our woofers that we were sampling. We had them make some for us. They were basically the same parameters, but just different cone material. I remember we had a Kevlar and a polypropylene, and the one that looked like it was carbon fiber, and we listened to them all and thought, well, damn, man, the paper cone has the best sound. And what's funny, on top of all that, it's the least expensive to have to buy. So why would we spend the extra for carbon fiber? And what's funny too is we kind of thought polypropylene had a better sound than the Kevlar and aluminum for sure. You know, they just didn't have as natural of a sound.
Well, they have. I mean, technically speaking, I guess they're a stiffer material for bass frequencies. They're probably better, I guess. But I mean, if you're building a two-way, then you're probably got to make that compromise. Hey, how do you see the future going, Danny? We've talked about AI, we've talked about co-materials just now, and you're pretty happy with the past. But what is the future? What's the future for GR-Research? I mean, you're clearly going to keep making these entertaining videos that people love to watch. But is there an angle you've got, that where you're headed?
Well, we're venturing now into completed speakers. These that I've done in conjunction with Ron at New Record Day. We've kind of reached another milestone of performance with this little Allie and Maddie model, and so that's coming. And the new finished speakers that we're doing that are the Encore Extremes, which are designed for imaging and soundstage layering and things. So we're venturing into production models, whereas before we stayed in the DIY market because I did design work for a lot of other companies, and I didn't want to compete with those companies because then I'm not just gun for hire, I'm the competition. So at this point I'm kind of going in that other direction and back to finished product. But I think the question is broader. If you look at it, is where's the industry going? And I think there's some concern there in that there's a turnover of people in the industry. When I go to a show, or when I would go to a show, and like I said before, a lot of us all know each other at the show, all the manufacturers, and we've become friends with each other. And I remember being at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, and there was 550 companies represented at that show. And I could only count on one hand the number of companies that either had engineers or owners that were my age or younger. So that really hasn't changed that much.
No.
I'm 59 years old now. And so you have to wonder what's going to happen to a lot of those companies. And, a lot of the people that we thought of as big founders of the industry have either passed or they're about to. And you have to wonder, are we reaching the next generation? And I think that's the real challenge is, are we reaching the younger audience and creating new audiophiles? Because when we were kids, we could go to the audio store and we could spend an hour or two in there and they would let us hear everything, and we would listen and we would geek out on that stuff, and then we would save our money and buy whatever we were geeked out on.
Yeah.
Kids today can't really do that. So.
Well, why do you say that, Danny?
Not in the U.S.
Well, in what sense can't they do it? You mean there's no audio stores, or are they distracted?
The audio stores. Yeah, the audio stores aren't there anymore. Used to. There's audio stores in every big city.
Well, there's certainly a lot less audio stores. Yeah, so worldwide.
A lot less. Now, I don't know about how things are in Australia or some of the other countries. But in the US,
less. There was an audio store in every regional town, and now I can tell you there is not.
Town,
there is not.
And there's a shop called Classic HiFi, second-hand store where they restore the gear. And I was in there one particular day, and a couple of blokes came in there, 24, 25, and they discovered, they were really pissed off with the sound quality of various gigs they were going to and that sort of thing. And they heard a decent system at their friend's place, and they came in to buy a pair of, even albeit second-hand, restored pair of loudspeakers and a big old pre-power combination and a turntable and whatever. So the younger people discovering stuff through the sort of second-hand market and starting to get interested in that, what they call cool gear. So there are the younger folk out there who are starting to sort of get interested, but it's just, what medium how do we attract them? That's the big thing. Well, YouTube possibly is one way.
So what do you think, Danny, just to round out the young, how to gain a new audience for excellent, audio equipment? Do you have a thought other than, you're clearly going to continue doing what you're doing, and a lot of your videos do appeal to an audience that is not rolling in money, right? Because what you're doing is enabling them to improve a $500 pair of speakers and make them sound like $1,000 pair of speakers. I mean, that's for less than $500 extra, if you know what I mean. So is that's part of your equation? But do you have any other thoughts on how you suck in a new audience?
Well, first of all, I love hearing those stories. Of the young people that are discovering this, and I just love it. That's great. I think we gained a lot of these young audiophiles from the headphone market, because that was their first step.
Yep.
They moved into higher end headphones and realized, wow, there's a lot to be had here. And then they started looking into speakers and stuff. And I gain a lot of them by like a Klipsch upgrade again, just something that's inexpensive, and they wind up executing that and think, dang, man, that really made a difference. And then they come back and they order an XLS Encore kit or something, and they'll build out one of our kits. So suddenly I've got these younger people that are building a kit, and they're becoming audiophiles. It's like I'm giving them those first steps, and then they're moving up the ladder. And I think there has to be some of those first steps out there. If they go to a show and everything they see at a show is mid 5 figures and up, they lose interest pretty quickly. You have to be able to provide something of reasonable performance at those lower price points.
Sure.
Or you lose those guys, and
yeah, absolutely.
So I think the kits, the DIY stuff, is a good way to reach them. A lot of them have started getting into vinyl, and man, you can spend a fortune, as you know, in vinyl on a playback system. But just getting them into a good turntable and a cartridge and stuff, and then that suddenly now they're looking at speakers. So I think that, and just the YouTube reviewers, the YouTube reviewers and everybody giving feedback on YouTube, I think that's
powerful.
a great way to reach the younger audience.
Also, what you're doing, Danny, I'll state the obvious, having not just upgrades for other brands, but having your own lineup of kits. It's going again back to the sort of my memory of the 70s and the 80s, where people had buying Kev kits and various other kits, and building their own speakers.
Yeah, that was great.
And those, but in a sense that meant a lot of us at university or whatever were buying those kit speakers and knocking them together, and that was our entry into that market. Well, you're in a sense sort of in a nostalgic way, sort of restoring that ability of having a great loudspeaker for not a lot of money, and bugger it, you can build it yourself if you want to. That's powerful in itself, and that's where YouTube propagates beautifully in that sense. Anyway.
Yeah. I think that too, back then we were more inclined to do stuff like that. I mean, if I think back to when I was a kid, my senior year of high school, I bought an old Camaro, and before that senior year was over, I had built a new engine for that Camaro.
Oh, Jesus.
And me and my buddies and I, we were building hot rods, and we were working on stuff, and we were modifying stuff. And today kids just don't do that. They don't buy a muscle car and make it their own. They might get into some newer model, sports car, but
they're
maybe
tuning the software.
It's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same as when we were kids.
So interesting point, Danny. No, we don't care. Just move on, Brad.
Sorry. What engine? 350 or sorry.
No, I built a 427 for the Camaro.
Of course you did.
Of course you did.
Yeah, a big block 427, and I dropped the rear end gear to a 411, and then
holy mackerel.
And then I had a 4-speed, and then that came out in a turbo 400 with a 4,000 RPM stall converter, and before you knew it, it was getting a little out of hand, and that engine needed to be pulled out and placed into a lightweight tube chassis car, and one thing kind of leads to another, just like audio.
We're not going to have a car conversation.
Guess what, Danny? Andrew's designed his own 3-wheeler car, so it's a very dangerous area to go
we're not
into.
going into
That's
automotive.
Another time.
Hey, what I want to know, Danny, so you're telling me, and this is what I do want to hear, because you just touched on it, is that a lot of younger people are not necessarily getting hands-on with hardware, but your kits, you have to. Do you supply them a sort of a wrap-up sort of box, or they got to cut their own box parts out and glue them together? And are they soldering the crossovers up? Like, are you selling them a soldering iron and some solder or whatever?
We've kind of got layers or steps that they can get into depending on where they're comfortable. They can print off the plans and build their own cabinets. They can go and get that MDF at Lowe's or Home Depot, and they can cut it all out and make it, or they can order a flat pack, which is a CNC cut MDF box, and they just glue it together. But always they have to install the crossover. They have to put it together, point to point wire it.
Okay.
connect everything, and they get all the instructions for that in the schematic, and we're here if they need us. Like, I try to be really attentive to email questions and phone calls, and they say, all right, I've got this in front of me. I don't understand this. The polarity's flipped on this tweeter. That's what they're asking.
Yeah.
Why is this? Is this correct? Is this supposed to? Yeah, that's correct. For that speaker and that network, it has to have a polarity flip, and it's to keep it acoustically in phase. And they're, okay, and then they go and put it together. Oh, that did work out really well.
I mean, that's great.
That's
isn't it? That's good.
Have to support the product, support the customer, and make sure that they can complete the project. And sometimes we've had a few guys that, like, man, this guy's just really struggling with it, and I'll say, you know what, just send that to me. Just send the crossover in. Send the crossover in. Let me fix it, because you've got. Let me rewire that for you to where it's clean, and then let me send it back to you. And sometimes I'll just fix it and send it back.
That's service.
That is service,
and you kind of have, but it's real rare. Usually they complete it with just, and sometimes they'll take photos and say, is this correct? And I'll look at it and say, oh, no, this is not wired correct. Or yeah, you got it. Just connect your wiring and just solder it. Now you're done. And it's easier than people think. My wife would sometimes help fill in orders, and she'd look at a schematic and she would pull the parts that are on that schematic, and she would lay the part on the schematic to make sure she had it. Like, it says a 10 microfarad cap. So she'd lay it on the spot on the schematic where it's there, and make sure they're all there. And I looked over and I said, if you'll just twist those parts together, you've completed this. You've assembled the crossover. All you got to do is twist them together as you've laid them out there, and then they can solder it. So sometimes it's really just that easy. You lay it out on the schematic, just like it is, and then just twist the parts together.
That's pretty cool.
And you run your wire to and from, and you got it. It's not that hard. My wife almost had it done.
So,
Danny, quick question. What's the average age of, I wonder, what's the demographic? Younger folk buying your kits, the cheaper kits? I wonder what your age group.
I think I'm reaching a lot of the kits and the upgrades. Some of them are a lot younger than I am. And then
yeah.
That's the benchmark.
Most of the population is.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, hey,
the really high end stuff though.
We're both older than you, Danny. Unfortunately.
Yeah, the really high end stuff though is really limited to the older market. People who have money. Like they build an N Extreme kit of mine and add servo subs that are open baffle. They'll spend between $9,000 and $10,000 on all those parts, and then they still have to put it together themselves.
Right.
That's not your entry level guy.
No.
So it just depends on the price point of some. And in some of these guys, once you get into a really high price point, they're not kit builders. They don't care about putting something together themselves. They just want to buy it and be done with it.
Yeah, Taylor.
It's the guys that down in the lower price points. Yeah, those guys want to build it themselves. Like, those customers will never buy a commercial speaker because part of the fun is building it themselves and having the pride of putting it together. And so it's a different segment of the market, and I think that's still where we bring in the new people.
Yes.
I really do. I think that's where we bring them in.
No, it's a good thing. Absolutely, it's definitely bringing fresh blood to the audio business. Hey, Danny, it sounds like you're busy as hell.
Not today, it's Sunday.
Well, no, but
day of rest.
No, I mean, how big is the business these days? You must employ a few people.
Busy. Yeah, we're busy. And a lot of that really I have to attribute to the YouTube channel. Even if somebody isn't ordering whatever I just worked on, it's keeping GR kind of fresh, popping up, and it's you can't buy advertising that's as good as what we get out of the YouTube channel.
Wow.
That's been a whole new way of reaching a worldwide audience. I know we had a pretty good year in what we call the COVID year because everybody was at home, not working, and they had money, and they decided, you know what, I'm going to work on my audio system. And so I remember at the time we were using PayPal as our merchant provider, and so all the credit cards and all the PayPal payments went through PayPal. And one of the things we could do on PayPal is track orders and see what countries they came from.
Yeah.
And I know that particular year we shipped product to 80 different countries.
Holy.
Crikey.
80 different countries. So it's
Jesus.
like,
Wow.
that was really pretty cool. And that I can pull that information up and see that. And most years now, we don't ship to that many different countries, and we'll ship more to specific countries. Like to Australia, I ship quite a bit to Australia or Canada and different places in the UK. But for some reason that year, like we ship stuff everywhere, it seemed like. And so,
well, it was strange times. So, yeah,
it was strange times. So you never know. You never know. And so we wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we wouldn't have shipped product all over the world because
couldn't have been done. Yeah,
they wouldn't have known of GR-Research.
No.
You know, so things have definitely changed. There's no store in every town anymore, but there's
the
YouTube on every iPad or computer.
Yeah, they've got a computer in every place in the world. So
on that note, Danny, thank you so much for your time. We've covered many subjects, and you've covered them in great detail. You've answered my hard questions, and I'm very appreciative of that because it gives me a greater understanding, but also the audience, that there's a lot of serious engineering behind your thoughts and the way you re-engineer people's crossovers and what your process is and why you do it that way and how it achieves a result. So thank you so much for your time. I know I say this to a few guests, Danny, but we'll have you back at some point. But I think we should, in a year's time.
Yes, please.
Fresh load of questions, and we'll pin you down. Thanks again.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See ya. Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Andrew.